Now, campaign news, not from Iowa. Christie is suspending his campaign for the Republican presidential nomination. The former New Jersey governor and most outspoken Trump critic in this race will make the announcement, we are told, in just a few minutes at an event to take place in New Hampshire. Sources tell NBC News that Christie is not expected to make an endorsement at this time. His decision, though, to suspend his campaign could be a boost to Nikki Haley, who is looking to consolidate support against former President Donald Trump in this month's New Hampshire primary and beyond. I want to get right to NBC's Garrett Hake, who has more on this and the impact it potentially has on this race right now. Garrett, you're there in Iowa right now. Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis are going to be watching this headline pretty closely, I'm sure.
Yeah, Peter, I think that's right. Look, and there's really a couple ways this can go. We have confirmed that Christie is planning to suspend his campaign when he takes the stage in New Hampshire just a few minutes from now. It's not clear if he plans to make any endorsement now or ever in this race, and that could change the dynamics in a couple of ways. And when you look at the polling here, Christie's been in a distant third in New Hampshire, basically no matter how you slice it. But he appeals to much the same demographic of voters as has Nikki Haley up until this point. More moderate voters, more independent voters who, of course, make up a huge percentage of the potential pool of voters in New Hampshire, a much smaller presence here in Iowa. But Christie on the sideline presumably frees up those voters for any candidate who might be able to appeal to them. And obviously, Nikki Haley's the first person you think of there. Our team who's been in New Hampshire, when they talk to voters, they often see that overlap between voters who are trying to decide between the two. And Christie himself has been kind of an enigma on this because he has in the past, of course, very publicly defended Nikki Haley, as he did during that most recent presidential debate when Vivek Ramaswamy was attacking her. But he's also been very critical of her in recent days, including as recently as this morning, for her not being more outspoken about Donald Trump, not being willing to more clearly state that she wouldn't be willing to serve as his vice president, or to say, as he has, that he believes Donald Trump is unfit for office. So whether Christie stays on the sidelines or endorses Haley could have an effect here. He was obviously a very effective surrogate in 2016 for Donald Trump. The X factor here, as I heard from one Trump ally a short time ago, is that it might not change the calculation that much in New Hampshire because Christie does not bring with him very many Republicans, traditional Republicans or MAGA Republicans. His favorability numbers within the modern Republican Party are terrible. And while he's been a darling of the independents and a darling of kind of anti-Trump Democrats or perhaps right-leaning independents, he's not popular with the party, in part because he has been so aggressive in going after Donald Trump. And so we'll see what he has to say tonight and what he chooses to do over the next 2 weeks, I suppose, until New Hampshire votes. And I'm sure it'll be a topic of discussion tonight on the debate stage here in Iowa, Peter.
Sorry to interrupt you. I think you put your finger on a really important point here. That's one we're going to be watching closely, is the potential for an endorsement here, in particular because the basis for this campaign in many ways was, right, to take it to Donald Trump. And in effect, he had to start this whole campaign by apologizing, expressing, in effect, remorse for supporting being the first candidate to stand side by side with Donald Trump the first time around when we did this. So it seems that that relationship between him and Nikki Haley, and whether he can feel comfortable that Haley would not serve as a vice president to Trump, is critical, because the last thing Christie, I would suggest, can afford to his own reputation is that he got out of this race and endorsed someone who ended up becoming a Trumper in whatever the ticket looks like in 2024.
Yeah, and he's said exactly that, Peter, on the campaign trail, that, you know, having made what he described as a decision between the lesser of two evils back in 2016 before endorsing Donald Trump against Hillary Clinton, he doesn't want to do that again. He wants to make sure that he can be comfortable sort of living with himself with the endorsement that he makes. And if he's to endorse Nikki Haley, he wants to be sure not only that she's not going to appear on a ticket with Donald Trump in 2024, but that she's not going to run with his imprimatur in 2028. So he's put all that out there. I mean, he's been very public about the idea that there are things she could potentially say and do to ultimately win his support down the line. I mean, her first opportunity to do that would be tonight. But of course, for Haley, she's got to walk a tightrope, because the electorate here in Iowa, which votes on Monday, looks very different from the one in New Hampshire. And this has been part of Christie's criticism of her, is that she has tried to be, he believes, all things to all people. Yeah. And by saying what he needs to hear in Iowa to get his support in New Hampshire, Haley could conceivably alienate voters she needs to have a strong showing here than she would need in New Hampshire.
Yeah, Garrett. Hey, by the way, excellent reporting. And can I say it's good to see your ears for once, given you've been outside in the frigid cold covered up for the last several days.
It is very
we're glad
good
to
be
see
back
that they
inside.
still
Yep.
exist after the frigid temperatures there in Iowa.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.